My name is Dash Robinson, and I was employed for the better part of 2 decades by an organization formerly known as ECHO, which stood for Expansive Cybernetics for Human Occupants. We put on the front of being a medical team, humanely searching for cures to humanity's ailments, as well as proactively perfecting artificial limbs and organs for hospitals. In reality, what we really did was far more sinister. We took in the people that the world didn't love, the homeless, runaways, mentally ill, even trafficking victims, and we conducted live experiments on them. We were funded by another, higher, even shadier organization, and were given complete freedom in our studies. We were a relatively large team, about 300 of us, and we each had extensive study in our own individual medical fields. Our head of personnel was a man by the name of Stephen Ettemeyer. We were sworn to secrecy about the happenings at our ECHO facility, and the happenings were aggressive and constant. We wanted to see how different types of artificial hearts worked, so we ripped out still beating hearts and tested our own mechanisms to see if they could actually sustain life. We put metallic stomachs in people's bellies, tore out fingernails and replaced them with plastic ones, cut off and replaced so many limbs you wouldn't believe it. The screams and utter agony of our test subjects got to me at first. I would like to think that it got to Ellie, my lover, and all of the other scientists and doctors as well. But after nearly 20 years, I've become desensitized to human suffering. We all believed that what we were doing was right, that every life lost was a necessary sacrifice for the future glory of humanity. But things weren't going smoothly. We wanted to see the way our cybernetic enhancements worked in the entirety of a human subject's life, starting from the day they were born. Ellie had a sister, Faith, who was a complete failure compared to herself. She had been kicked out by her parents due to being a young alcoholic and straight-up troublemaker in the community. Ellie procured her for us, and that was when Project Algos began. One of our scientists, a young, fit and healthy male called Dr. Stafford, impregnated Faith, and we began our careful study of her. No modifications were made to Faith herself. She wasn't the main subject of this particular project. Her unborn child was. After taking very good care of Faith during her term, we delivered a healthy 6-pound baby boy. Faith called him Adam. We didn't care what he was called. We allowed the child to live in the chamber with his mother for the first 8 months of his life. Then we separated them and did our first modification. We removed the child's left foot and replaced it with a model made of flexible material, which, under our manipulation, was meant to grow and lengthen in accordance with the child's other limbs. We cut Adam off formula milk and began feeding him our own concoction, composed of nutrients we deemed a more healthy alternative for humanity, though still yet to be tested. By the time Adam was 3, we had already removed his right ear, right lung, left thumb, and the aforementioned left foot. Every appendage had been replaced by a model of our own, and, so far, Adam was fully responsive and, if anything, more prosperous than a regular child. He was already reading and completing puzzles meant for children much older by the time he was 4 years old. His mother, though apprehensive about our experiments on him, seems proud whenever she got to see him. Dr. Ettemeyer was even more proud of our research team as a whole. We gave the child a pet rabbit when he turned 8. We studied his interactions with it for 6 months before euthanizing the animal before his eyes. Adam showed no sign of sorrow in those grey eyes of his. We were most impressed. If humans could eventually evolve to live without emotion, Ettemeyer summarized, there would be nothing that could ever hinder our advancement as a species as a whole. Adam was 11 when we took his tongue and replaced it with a yellow, sponge-like organ that we believed would be far more recipient to taste than any human tongue could be. Adam didn't disappoint. He seemed to relish every single bite he took, every single sip of water. It was as though he was living in ecstasy. The only side effect, however, was that he couldn't talk anymore. He only nodded or shook his head whenever we asked him questions. Though Ellie initially objected to it, the decision was made to see how a greater attachment than the rabbit suddenly being severed would affect Adam's behavior. The only other physical and emotional attachment he had was his mother, Ellie's sister, Faith, who had grown to cooperate with us after all these years. While we had taken the peaceful and clean route with ending the rabbit, Faith's destruction was, by design, efficiently violent. Both her legs were broken, and she was shot in the head right in front of Adam. Droplets of blood splattered his face, but Adam did not mourn or even look at a corpse. Instead, he turned his back to us and returned to his favorite hobby, drawing. We introduced Adam to lewd images when he was 14. When he was 16, we removed his bits, replacing them with our own enhancements. Replicating the male sex drive proved to be one of our toughest endeavors, but Adam was able to use it and produce the false semen at an even healthier rate than before. Though he was now sterile, we summarized that we could actually add one's actual testosterone to the mechanical organ one day. An organ that would never malfunction or contract or spread disease. Dr. Ettermeyer threw a celebratory party the night before Adam's 18th birthday. We were all so ecstatic. We had nourished and supplemented a human being from the time he was conceived all the way to his adulthood. At this point, we believed that we were God. To Adam, we probably were. At this point, he was more machine than man, both inside and out. 90% of his internal organs were produced by Echo. His left foot, right ear, right eyeball, left thumb, right hand, right lower leg, and replaced it with more receptive grafts made from mixtures of certain animal hides. Even Adam's blood had slowly been filtered and was now about a 50-50 mixture of the blood he had been born with and new blood created to combat other human diseases by our research team. Adam had even prospered physically from our control over every aspect of his life. He towered at a height of 6'9", taller than anyone else in Ellie's family. He would never be athletic, but he was wickedly intelligent and even clever. We had done far more good for him than he would ever realize. I remember announcing to everyone at the party that Ellie and I were expecting. There was applause all around, and I kissed her as we stood at the center of attention. Project Algos was going perfectly, and our funding, as well as salaries, had increased drastically over the years. Everything in life was great. And then, the clock struck 12. No one noticed the single door to the conference chamber being opened. No one saw him until he had lumbered for about a minute. But when we finally did, a sudden silence fell in the room, like a great shadow cast over a burning fire. Adam stood before us, a giant among men, 6'9" and packed with 290 pounds of muscle. His one artificial eye, which was red as opposed to grey, didn't blink like his other eye did, but he was looking at all of us, his perpetual frown we all knew so well, disgracing his face. "Did someone let him out?" asked Dr. Ettermeyer after several long seconds of painful silence. "Wesley? Trina?" "No, Stephen. We never even went to see him today." Dr. Ettermeyer slowly approached Adam, along with Wesley and Trina, his primary caretakers. He had never given us any issue, but this was still surreal. None of us had ever seen him outside of his chamber. "Adam, what on earth are you doing out of your chamber?" asked Dr. Ettermeyer. It was supposed to be a rhetorical question, but Adam answered. Today is my birthday. Ettermeyer froze, as did Wesley and Trina. It would have been less surprising for a spirit to have suddenly appeared and spoken to us. But this was not supposed to be happening. Adam turned his head slowly to the left, making eye contact with Dr. Stafford. Father. Stafford dropped his drink, the glass shattering on the floor. Adam reached out and stuck both hands in Dr. Ettermeyer's mouth. He yanked up with his left hand and down with his right, ripping apart the old man's jaws. Ettermeyer fell to the floor, convulsing, and Adam seized Trina, twisting her head and breaking her neck. He then picked up Wesley like he were a rag doll and threw him at the first person who had made a run for the door. Wesley's head connected with the runners at high speed, and both went sprawling to the floor. Others tried to make a run for it, but Adam, it turned out, could run after all, and faster than any of us. He was in front of the door in an instant, grabbing two people by the heads and smashing them together, sending blood gushing in every direction. People screamed and ran, but there were no windows in this room. Adam began stalking about, ripping off limbs and ending lives. Those who could make it to the door did, but they were far and few. Ellie and I hid behind a table and watched as Adam seized Dr. Stafford by the throat and threw him down to the floor. Why? A co-worker wailed in a high-pitched voice, a puddle forming beneath him. Adam had been leaning down to hit him, but he suddenly paused. His dispassionate expression did not change, however. He knelt and brushed Dr. Stafford's hair from his face, then offered a hand and helped him stand up. Do you love me, Father? Stafford was crying as he nodded like a bobblehead. Of course I do, son. Of course I do. Adam smiled. His teeth, brilliant and white, had never been touched by us. He took Stafford into his arms and hugged him tight, and tighter, and tighter. Ellie and I watched in horror as Adam squeezed Stafford close, breaking every bone in his body. Blood ran from Stafford's nose and eye sockets as his offspring ended him. Our offspring. Ellie and I made a run for it. Adam glanced back at us, but kept his attention on crushing Dr. Stafford. I could see broken bones jutting out of his skin. That was nearly 2 weeks ago. I have no idea what happened to the facility, and I haven't been contacted by any of the higher-ups. I do know one thing, though. He has been finding us somehow. I've seen 4 of my former co-workers on the news having been murdered in, quote, grisly manners. Ellie went to a yoga class with her friends and, according to them, was carried off by a behemoth. Her body still hasn't turned up. As for me, I would leave my house, stay in a hotel maybe, or go on the run. But I know that it is pointless. I know that he will find me, like he did the others before me. I don't know if Adam hates us, or is angry, or if he's even capable of emotion. I just know that, if he is capable, then he should be grateful. We made him into the perfect being.